Did you ever stop to think about the true power players in a medieval household, especially during the 12th to the 15th centuries? Were they just sitting by the fire? What secrets did they hold about keeping a family alive and thriving? Number 7. The custodian of lore and lineage. Life in the medieval world was not like scrolling through social media. There were no written histories readily available for everyone. Family tales, local legends, and the very structure of who was related to whom all lived in the memories of the oldest people. Elderly women, having lived through decades of change and countless life events, were the living archives of their households, and sometimes even their communities. They carried the stories of ancestors, the triumphs and tragedies that shaped the family's standing. These women were not just remembering for fun. They were actively preserving the identity of the household. Think about a long winter evening in a drafty hall, a single fire crackling in the hearth. Children would gather close, their breath misting in the cool air as an elderly matriarch, perhaps Dame Eleanor, began to speak. Her voice, softened by age, would weave narratives of her grandmother's bravery during a famine or her uncle's cleverness in brokering a dispute with a neighboring lord. These stories were more than entertainment. They were lessons. They taught resilience, problem-solving, and the importance of family reputation. Historical accounts suggest that these storytelling sessions instilled moral values and practical wisdom in younger generations, serving as a powerful form of education that transcended mere book learning. The tales also ensured that the younger members understood their place within the family's long history, connecting them to a past they had never seen. The elderly women were also key in transmitting the lineage. They knew who married whom, who was related to which powerful family, and what lands were gained or lost through these unions. In an age where alliances and inheritance were paramount, this knowledge was invaluable. A younger lord or lady might rely on their grandmother's precise memory of family trees to validate a claim to property or to negotiate a marriage alliance that benefited the household. Court records from the period often show disputes over inheritance, and the testimony of elder family members, particularly women, was sometimes crucial in settling these claims. Their word carried significant weight because they were seen as objective sources of long-standing knowledge. Beyond family history, these women preserved local traditions, superstitions, and even the unwritten rules of social etiquette. They knew the proper way to host a feast, the specific rituals for celebrating saints' days, or the superstitions that guided planting and harvesting. A young bride entering a new household, perhaps from a different region, would look to the elderly women for guidance on how to fit in and manage the household's unique customs. The grandmother of the house might explain why certain herbs were hung above the door, or why particular songs were sung during the harvest festival. These were not arbitrary rules. They were the shared language of the community, and the elderly women were the ones who ensured this language was spoken correctly by everyone. They also passed on a rich oral culture of folk tales, riddles, and songs. Many of the fairy tales and legends we know today have roots in these medieval oral traditions. Before books were common, these narratives were the primary way people entertained themselves and taught complex ideas. An old woman might tell a cautionary tale about a mischievous spirit, or a heroic saga of a local saint. These stories reinforced community values and provided a framework for understanding the world, both seen and unseen. The ability to captivate an audience with a well-told story was a valued skill, and elderly women often excelled at it, their voices carrying the weight of experience. This role ensured that the cultural heritage of the household and its surrounding community survived from one generation to the next, even without extensive written documentation. Their memory was the family library, their voice the storyteller for all ages. Number 6. the spiritual guide and moral compass. In a world deeply shaped by faith, elderly women often served as the primary spiritual guides and moral compasses within their households. Their long lives meant they had witnessed many of life's trials and triumphs, and they had often developed a profound understanding of Christian doctrine and its application to daily living. This was not about formal theological study, which was largely reserved for men in monasteries or universities. This was about practical, lived spirituality that permeated every aspect of medieval existence. From the humblest cottage to the grandest castle, prayer was a daily ritual. Elderly women were often the ones who led these prayers, teaching children and even younger adults the correct forms of devotion. They knew the Pater Noster, the Ave Maria, and various litanies by heart, often having recited them thousands of times over their lives. They would guide the household through morning prayers, evening prayers, and prayers before meals. Historical records indicate that pious practices were frequently fostered by the senior women of the family, who emphasized the importance of regular attendance at church services and participation in religious festivals. They instilled a sense of duty towards God and community. Beyond leading prayers, these women were instrumental in moral instruction. They would teach the young about right and wrong, using stories from the Bible or parables from saints' lives. They would explain the importance of virtues like charity, humility, patience, and honesty. When a child misbehaved or a young adult faced a moral dilemma, it was often the grandmother or elder aunt who offered counsel, drawing on her lifetime of experience and her deep understanding of Christian ethics. They might remind a young person of the consequences of sin or the rewards of virtuous living. These were not abstract lessons. They were rooted in the daily struggles and choices faced by ordinary people. For women especially, the elderly matriarch could be a crucial mentor in navigating the spiritual demands placed upon them. She would advise on the proper conduct for a wife, a mother, or a maiden. She might teach a young woman how to manage a household piously, ensuring that religious observances were not neglected amidst domestic duties. Medieval texts and artwork often depict older women in prayer, suggesting their prominent role in setting a religious example for the entire household. Their consistent piety was a beacon for others to follow. Furthermore, elderly women often played a significant role in preparing the sick and dying for the afterlife. They would offer comfort, lead prayers at the bedside, and ensure that the dying received the last rites from a priest. In an era when death was a constant presence, this spiritual support was incredibly vital. They helped families cope with grief by providing a framework of faith and hope. Their presence brought solace and helped maintain spiritual order, even in times of profound distress. This care extended beyond the physical, into the very soul of the individual and the collective spirit of the household. Sometimes, elderly women were also consulted on matters of conscience. A younger member of the household might confess a wrongdoing or a troubling thought to an elder woman, seeking her wisdom before going to a priest. While not official confessors, their guidance was highly valued. They could offer a sympathetic ear and practical advice rooted in both spiritual understanding and worldly experience. Their role was informal but profound, ensuring that the spiritual well-being of the household was nurtured and protected. They were the unofficial spiritual counselors, weaving faith into the very fabric of daily medieval existence, ensuring that traditions and moral standards were upheld with unwavering devotion. Number 5. The keeper of the hearth and pantry. The survival of a medieval household, from the humblest peasant dwelling to the most imposing castle, depended entirely on the efficient management of food. This was not just about cooking a meal. It was about ensuring there was food to cook throughout the year, especially through the lean winter months. Elderly women were often the masterminds behind this critical operation, serving as the primary keepers of the hearth and pantry. Their experience in food preparation and preservation was unparalleled, a skill honed over decades of feast and famine. Consider the complexity of food preservation in a time before refrigeration. Every harvest brought a flurry of activity, and it was often the elderly women who directed these efforts. They knew the precise methods for salting meat and fish, turning fresh produce into dried goods, pickling vegetables, and smoking various provisions. A misstep in any of these processes could mean spoilage, leading to hunger and even starvation for the entire household. Records from manorial estates show detailed inventories of foodstuffs, and it was often the mistress of the house, often an elder woman, who oversaw these supplies, ensuring they were stored correctly and rationed wisely. Baking was another skill perfected by older women. Bread was the staple of the medieval diet, eaten at every meal by nearly everyone. The process of turning grain into edible bread involved precise knowledge of leavening, kneading, and oven temperatures, often using communal ovens. An elderly woman, such as Mistress Agnes, might spend her days supervising the baking process, ensuring that enough bread was made for the day's meals and that it was properly stored to prevent staleness. She might also teach younger women the nuances of baking, passing down recipes for different types of bread, from coarse rye loaves for laborers to finer wheat bread for the Lord's table. Her expertise ensured a steady supply of this fundamental food. Brewing was also a critical responsibility. Water was often unsafe to drink, so ale and beer, which were fermented, became essential beverages for all ages. It was primarily women who brewed, and the most experienced brewers were often the elderly women of the household. They understood the fermentation process, the right balance of hops and malt, and the specific temperatures required to produce a safe and palatable drink. This was not a minor task. A typical household could consume large quantities of ale daily. A bad batch could mean illness or general discontent. The skilled hands of an elder brewer ensured that the household had a safe and refreshing drink supply throughout the year, contributing significantly to overall health and morale. Cooking itself was a demanding task, especially for large households. Elderly women often oversaw the entire kitchen operation, delegating tasks to younger servants or family members while still maintaining ultimate control over the quality and quantity of meals. They knew how to make the most of available ingredients, how to flavor dishes with precious spices, and how to prepare meals that were both nourishing and culturally appropriate for various occasions. They understood which herbs could cure ailments and which were merely for flavor. Their long experience meant they could adapt to lean times, making hearty stews from limited resources and orchestrate lavish feasts when provisions were plentiful. They ensured that the household was well fed and that the dietary needs of everyone, from the laborers to the children, were met. The kitchen was truly their domain, where centuries of culinary knowledge converged under their experienced guidance. Number 4. The weaver of warmth and wealth. In the medieval period, textiles were not merely about fashion. They were about warmth, protection, and often a significant source of wealth. The entire process of textile production, from processing raw materials to creating finished garments, was an incredibly time-consuming and labor-intensive endeavor. Elderly women, having spent decades mastering these complex skills, often served as the central figures in this vital aspect of household economy. They were the weavers of warmth, literally providing clothing and bedding, and indirectly contributing to the household's wealth through their expertise. Consider the raw materials. Wool was the most common fiber, and before it could be spun, it needed extensive preparation. This involved cleaning, carding, and combing the raw fleece to remove impurities and align the fibers. An elderly woman, perhaps known for her meticulousness, would oversee or directly perform these initial steps, ensuring the wool was perfectly prepared for spinning. This precision was crucial because poorly prepared wool would lead to weak threads and inferior cloth. Her experienced hands could detect imperfections that a younger person might miss. Spinning was a continuous task, often carried out by women of all ages. However, the most skilled spinners, those who could produce the finest, most consistent thread, were frequently the elder women. They would teach younger girls the rhythm and technique of the spinning wheel or spindle, ensuring the transmission of this fundamental skill. Historical illustrations often depict older women diligently spinning, indicating their dedication to this necessary craft. The quality of the thread directly impacted the quality of the woven cloth, and the elder women's expertise guaranteed a high standard. Weaving was even more complex, requiring significant strength, coordination, and an understanding of intricate patterns. On a loom, threads were transformed into fabric, a process that could take weeks or even months for a single bolt of cloth. While younger women might assist, it was often the elder women who possessed the patience and skill to operate the loom, creating durable and sometimes beautifully patterned textiles. They knew how to mend breaks in the threads, adjust tension, and ensure a consistent weave. Accounts from medieval households mention the importance of domestic textile production, highlighting how a household's ability to produce its own cloth reduced its reliance on external markets and saved valuable resources. Beyond creating new cloth, elderly women were indispensable in the repair and repurposing of existing garments. Clothing was expensive and precious. It was not discarded lightly. An elderly woman would meticulously mend tears, darn holes, and reinforce worn areas, extending the life of garments for years. When clothes were truly beyond repair, she would expertly reponseed the fabric into smaller items, such as rags, bandages, or padding. This practice of making do and mending was a cornerstone of medieval frugality and resourcefulness, ensuring that nothing went to waste. Her skills saved the household money and maximized the utility of every scrap of textile. Their knowledge also extended to natural dyes, knowing which plants and minerals could create vibrant colors for wool and linen. They understood the mordants needed to fix the dyes and the specific processes for achieving different shades. This added another layer of value to the textiles produced, making them more attractive and sometimes indicative of status. The textiles produced under the guidance of these experienced women provided the family with essential clothing, bedding, and household linens, securing warmth and comfort. This work, often invisible in grand historical narratives, was a constant, daily effort that directly contributed to the household's sustained well-being and economic stability. Truly a weaver of warmth and wealth for generation. Number 3. The household healer. Before the age of hospitals and readily available physicians, the burden of healthcare for most people fell squarely upon the shoulders of women within the household. Among them, elderly women were the primary caregivers and medical practitioners, serving as the household healers. Their accumulated knowledge of herbal remedies, traditional treatments, and basic nursing skills gathered over decades of personal experience and passed down through generations was absolutely vital for the well-being and survival of their families. Their expertise was the difference between recovery and prolonged suffering, sometimes even life and death. Consider the sheer variety of ailments that could strike a medieval household. Fevers, coughs, broken bones, infected wounds, digestive issues, and the common illnesses of childhood. There was no local clinic to visit. Instead, the sick would turn to the eldest woman in the house, trusting in her knowledge of what herbs to gather, how to prepare a poultice, or what broth might bring strength. She knew which plants grew in the local woods or garden, which ones were poisonous, and which held medicinal properties. Accounts from the period though often anecdotal, frequently refer to the wise woman of the village or household, a figure almost certainly referring to an experienced elder woman with healing skills. Herbal medicine was a cornerstone of their practice. An elderly woman might have a vast mental catalog of plants: chamomile for sleep, willow bark for pain, valerian for anxiety, or comfrey for mending bones. She would know the precise parts of the plant to use, roots, leaves, flowers, and the best time to harvest them. She would then prepare them as teas, tinctures, salves, or compresses. For instance, for a persistent cough, she might brew a potent tea from horehound and honey, or for a fever, she might apply cool cloths infused with specific herbs to the brow. This knowledge was practical, empirical, and immensely valuable, often passed down from mother to daughter over centuries. Midwifery was another crucial domain where elderly women reigned supreme. Childbirth was incredibly dangerous in the Middle Ages. With high mortality rates for both mother and infant, skilled midwives were indispensable. These were almost exclusively experienced older women who had often borne many children themselves and had assisted at countless births. They understood the stages of labor, how to manage complications with the limited tools available, and how to care for the newborn and the new mother. They provided not just physical assistance, but also emotional support and reassurance, drawing on their calm demeanor and deep understanding of the birthing process. Without their expertise, many more lives would undoubtedly have been lost during delivery. Beyond specific treatments, elderly women provided essential nursing care. They sat by the sickbed, changed dressings, cleaned wounds, and ensured the patient was kept warm, fed, and hydrated. They understood the importance of hygiene, though rudimentary by modern standards, in preventing the spread of disease within the household. They knew how to recognize worsening symptoms and when to seek spiritual or even formal medical intervention, which was rare and often costly. Their constant presence and attentive care were often as important as any specific remedy in promoting recovery. Their dedication and practical wisdom were the first line of defense against illness and injury, making them truly indispensable for the health and vitality of medieval families. Their knowledge, passed down through generations, was a precious legacy, silently safeguarding the lives of those they cared for. Number 2. The cradle keeper and educator. In the medieval household, children were abundant, and their care and upbringing were paramount. While mothers certainly played a central role, elderly women often stepped into the crucial positions of cradle keepers and educators. They were not merely babysitters. They were the first teachers, imparting fundamental skills, moral lessons, and behavioral norms to the youngest members of the family. Their long experience made them patient, mentored, and their wisdom helped shape the next generation from their earliest years. From the moment an infant was born, an elderly woman, often a grandmother or great-aunt, might be present to assist the mother and provide guidance. She would know how to swaddle a baby, how to soothe a crying child, and how to recognize signs of illness in the very young. In many households, it was the elder women who largely took on the daily physical care of infants, allowing the younger mothers to resume other household duties or recover from childbirth. This was a continuous, demanding role that required immense patience and a deep understanding of infant needs. Their experienced hands and calming presence were a source of comfort and stability for both the baby and the often overwhelmed young mother. As children grew, the elderly women became their primary educators in practical skills. For girls, this education was particularly comprehensive. From a very young age, a girl would learn by observation and imitation, often under the direct supervision of her grandmother or another older female relative. She would learn how to spin wool, how to mend torn garments, how to churn butter, and how to prepare simple foods. These were not optional skills. They were essential for managing a household and for a woman's future role as a wife and mother. The elderly women would patiently demonstrate techniques, correct mistakes, and instill discipline and diligence. They understood that these skills were the foundation of a successful life for medieval women. Boys, while often taught practical skills by men as they grew older, also spent their early years under the tutelage of elderly women. They would learn basic manners, respect for elders, and the importance of cleanliness. They would also learn simple tasks, like fetching water or tending a small garden plot. The elder women were responsible for instilling early moral lessons, teaching stories of saints and heroes that conveyed virtues like courage and honesty. They would guide the young ones through their first prayers and introduce them to the basic tenets of their faith. This early instruction, delivered by the kind but firm hand of an elder woman, laid the groundwork for their later education and development. Beyond practical tasks, elderly women instilled a strong sense of tradition and family identity. They would teach children the names of their ancestors, the family's historical milestones, and the significance of various customs and rituals. They knew the lullabies, nursery rhymes, and simple songs that entertained and educated. They would explain the meaning behind religious holidays and local festivals, ensuring that the younger generation understood their cultural heritage. This oral tradition was crucial in a time when formal schooling was rare and books were luxuries. The wisdom of the elders was the primary textbook for a child's early years, providing a rich foundation of knowledge, skills, and values that prepared them for their future roles within the family and community. Their profound influence ensured the continuity of family life and social order, safeguarding the very essence of the medieval household. Number 1. The mastermind of domestic economy. At the pinnacle of their influence, elderly women, particularly the matriarchs of the family, often served as the true masterminds of the medieval household's domestic economy. This role extended far beyond cooking or cleaning. It encompassed a complex web of oversight, budgeting, provisioning, and personnel management that was absolutely critical for the survival and prosperity of the entire family unit. Whether in a peasant cottage or a noble estate, the effective management of resources under the guidance of an elder woman could mean the difference between plenty and destitution. Consider a large, noble household, bustling with servants, family members, and sometimes dozens of guests. The lady of the house, often an experienced elder woman, would hold the keys to the stores, symbolically and literally controlling access to provisions. She would oversee the daily distribution of food, ale, candles, and other necessities. She would keep meticulous records, sometimes on wax tablets or simple parchments, detailing what came in and what went out. These household accounts, where they survive, reveal the intricate financial management performed by women, tracking everything from grain purchases to the cost of repairing farm tools. This was sophisticated budgeting without modern spreadsheets. Relying on keen memory and careful observation, provisioning was a year-round challenge. An elder mistress understood the seasonal cycles of production and consumption. She knew when to buy seeds, when to salt meat for the winter, when to brew the strongest ale, and when to send servants to the market for specific goods. She would oversee the annual harvest, ensuring that crops were stored properly to prevent spoilage, and that surpluses were either sold or preserved for future use. For instance, Lady Isabella, a recorded noblewoman from the 14th century, meticulously planned her household's food supply for months in advance. Coordinating with bailiffs and farmers to ensure sufficient provisions, her foresight prevented shortages and minimized waste. Management of servants and laborers also fell under her purview. In a large household, there could be dozens of servants, from cooks and cleaners to stable boys and weavers. An elder woman was responsible for hiring, training, and supervising these individuals. She would assign tasks, ensure they were completed efficiently, and mediate disputes among the staff. She understood the skills required for each role and how to motivate her workforce. Her leadership was essential for maintaining order and productivity, transforming a collection of individuals into a smoothly functioning domestic machine. Without her strong hand, chaos could easily ensue, impacting the entire household's efficiency and reputation. Furthermore, elder women were often responsible for managing household industries. We have already seen their role in textile production and brewing. Beyond that, they might oversee the making of cheeses, butter, candles, soap, and even medicines for general use. These were not just for consumption within the household. Sometimes surplus goods were sold at local markets, generating crucial income. The shrewd management of these domestic enterprises added significant value to the household economy, turning raw materials into finished products that either saved money or earned it. The elder woman was the central figure ensuring quality, control, and efficient production across these varied ventures. Their influence extended to strategic planning. They would advise their husbands or sons on matters of trade, investment in land, or even marriage alliances, drawing on their vast experience and deep understanding of family resources and connections. A successful marriage could bring land, wealth, or powerful allies, and the elder women often had the best grasp of the family's social capital. Their wisdom was not just about household chores. It was about the financial and social health of the entire lineage. These women were the unsung chief operating officers of medieval homes, directing the daily flow of goods, labor, and wealth, ensuring the continuity and prosperity of their families against all odds. Their quiet power and profound intelligence kept the medieval world turning.